Ohio State faces one of the more hostile environments in college football for a second straight week. Of course, they passed the first test in winning in overtime at Madison over Wisconsin 23-20. This time around, it's Happy Valley in Penn State. MarkRogersTV talking Nittany Lions and Buckeyes. And first thought that comes to mind is Ohio State may not be as invincible as we thought just a few weeks ago. The passing offense suffered against Indiana 2 weeks ago. Last week, it was the entire offense for most of the first three quarters of the game. The Buckeyes trailed 16-6, got the offense in gear. J.T. Barrett broke Braxton Miller's all-time touchdown record at Ohio State en route to the three-point win in overtime. And the Buckeyes looked really good on offense in the fourth quarter and in overtime in amassing 411 yards against one of the best defenses in college football, definitely one of the best front sevens in Wisconsin. And Ohio State eventually did wear them down in the ground game as well, and that was good to see for Ohio State fans because now the Buckeyes face the 12th-ranked rush defense in the Big Ten. This is not the Penn State defense of last year or the year before. This is a pretty porous defense for Penn State. Check out the Pitt tape. Check out some of the other games before the Nittany Lions kind of kicked it in and played a much better game on both sides of the ball against Maryland at 38-14. So Ohio State on offense, probably the one missing link from what the Buckeyes have had in recent years with Devin Smith a few years ago, and to a little lesser extent, Jalen Marshall and Michael Thomas over the past season in 2015, was that guy that could go over the top and really threaten the defense vertically. The Buckeyes are extremely deep at wide receiver with a number of guys led by Noah Brown, very physical, very athletic. They outfight defenders for the football. They high point the football. They're big, they're physical, but to get downfield and scare the defense, we have yet to see that, and that's missing from the Buckeyes passing game. And J.T. Barrett, really not a great deep thrower, but he has been very resourceful in the ground game, and Ohio State's needed that in the last 2 weeks against Indiana. 137 yards on the ground for Barrett and 92 against Wisconsin, and he was key. JT, if he can't run the ball, he's not going to be a dynamic runner and break away for 80-yard runs and do Michael Vick-type moves. But his consistency in the ground game, him knowing how to push the pile, how to find the seam, and how to pick out the blocking scheme on most of those keepers around left and right end. For some reason, the Buckeyes like to go the left side on the quarterback keepers. J.T. Barrett has distinguished himself and made a huge difference there. Ohio State defensively showed some chinks against Wisconsin. Corey Clement and a Wisconsin ground game that is traditionally vaunted, top 5 in the nation, with all the great backs and offensive linemen produced for the NFL. But last year and for the first few games this year, this has not been a great Wisconsin ground game. Corey Clement came into the Ohio State game averaging less than 4 yards per carry, but he hit up the Buckeyes for 164 yards rushing on 25 carries. So Saquon Barkley has to be salivating just a bit considering the talent on the other side of the ball, that he ripped up the Buckeyes in Columbus for 194 yards last year. And the Buckeyes really didn't have a solution for him because the pass game not working for Penn State, and Ohio State won easily, but Saquon Barkley was dynamic. And he's coming off a 202-yard performance against Maryland. Penn State's had 2 weeks to prepare for Ohio State with a bye week in between. Ohio State coming off the rough game and a physical contest against Wisconsin could be in for a difficult time in Happy Valley. Recently in the series, the Buckeyes have dominated in terms of wins and losses, and they have crushed Penn State at home in the shoe, but in Happy Valley, most recently 2 years ago, en route to a national championship, winning in overtime in a game that they probably shouldn't have won. Ohio State has played some close ones against Penn State with whiteout conditions. Penn State's offensive line, this is not good news for Nittany Lion fans. It is in disarray. It has been for a number of years, but specifically with veteran offensive tackle Andrew Nelson going down in the last game. Don't know his availability. Offensive line coach Matt Limegrover has a number of moves to make. Chaz Wright may have to be forced into the lineup as a true freshman against Ohio State's front of Robert Landers in particular has been spectacular. And on the ends, guys coming off the edge like Jerome Baker at linebacker, and of course Sam Hubbard. Nick Bosa has made his presence felt in recent weeks. Jalen Holmes came up with a big sack in overtime to end the game at Wisconsin. Saquon Barkley, we mentioned, big rushing day against Maryland at 202, 194 against the Buckeyes last week, one of the best in college football. I am looking forward to the battle between the Ohio State secondary, BIA, best in the business, best in America is what they call themselves at Ohio State. They didn't look it all the time against Wisconsin, but Gary and Connolly came up with a huge interception in the second half to lead the comeback. And we know about the Buckeyes in the secondary, what they did to Baker Mayfield and company. And again, in the second half against Alex Hornibrook, and facing a wide receiver core that is extremely dynamic. Chris Gesicki has been a mainstay at tight end. He was a question mark coming into the season. He's been very productive. Chris Godwin's one of the best in the Big Ten. Deshaun Hamilton, and of course, DeAndre Tompkins is very much emerging into a threat. So Ohio State with its hands full in the secondary, if Penn State can protect, and that's a huge if because of the offensive line issues and because of Ohio State's speed and athleticism and push in the middle with Landers and company. Tyquan Lewis also in the mix for Ohio State. Protecting Trace McSorley, who's been a threat on the ground with 154 yards the last 2 weeks, is going to be key to this game. So Ohio State is Penn State. I expect the Nittany Lions, as they have in recent years in Happy Valley, stood up well to the challenge against Ohio State. Buckeyes win this one. Let's say 34-17, Ohio State wins at Penn State in Happy Valley and continues its undefeated streak. Need to hear from you, your pick on Ohio State, Penn State, right here on Mark Rogers TV.